On the morning of Monday, August 2nd, 1790, a rider turned up a dirt lane toward a Pennsylvania farmhouse, carrying paper, ink, and 6 questions. He was an assistant marshal of the United States, one of roughly 650 men sent out to do something no nation on earth had ever attempted: count every single person in the country and write down the family name at the head of every household. Taylor, Wilson, Davis, Jones, Johnson, Smith. What that rider could never have known is that more than a century later, the Census Bureau would go back through those same handwritten pages, name by name, and prove exactly which surnames founded America. Not guessed, counted. If your last name is one of the 10 in this video, the arithmetic says your family was very likely on this continent while George Washington was still president. And the name at number 1 didn't just appear in that first census, it dominated it. With a number so large, the government clerks who found it printed it in a federal report. Stay to the end, because that number is the closest thing American genealogy has to a founding certificate. Number 10. Thompson, son of Thomas, a name rooted ultimately in the Aramaic word for twin. And this one carries a spelling clue that family researchers still use today. In northern England, the name usually took a P-T-H-O-M-P-S-O-N. Across the border in Scotland, it usually did not. Thompson, that single letter sitting in an old parish record, can point toward which side of the border your people called home. The most famous bearer of the founding era spelled it the Scottish way. Charles Thompson, born in County Derry in Ulster in 1729. Served as Secretary of the Continental Congress for 15 years, and his signature appears beside John Hancock's on the first printed broadsides of the Declaration of Independence. For 15 years, the official record of the American Revolution ran through one Ulster-born hand. If your name is Thompson, check the oldest spelling you can find. That P, or its absence, may be the first clue in your whole family trail. The next name belonged to a tradesman every village needed, and to a 5-year-old boy the census riders passed on the Kentucky frontier. Number 9. Tailor, an occupational name from the Old French tailleur, the man who cut and stitched cloth, brought to England with the Norman conquest of 1066. Every market town needed one. So the name sprang up independently all over England, which is why tailors are everywhere and mostly unrelated. But here is the founding era detail. In 1790, the census takers in Kentucky would have ridden past a farm near Louisville where a 5-year-old boy named Zachary Taylor was growing up. Born in Orange County, Virginia on November 24, 1784, and carried over the mountains as an infant. That boy on the Kentucky frontier would one day become the 12th President of the United States. If your name is Taylor, your ancestor was, somewhere back down the line. The one man in the parish trusted to turn raw cloth into clothing, and your name was already riding the wagon roads west before the Constitution was 3 years old. The next name wasn't a trade of the hands at all. It was a trade of the mind, and in the Middle Ages, it was rarer than gold. Number 8. Clerk. This name is a fossil of medieval literacy. It comes from the Latin clericus, the clerk. And in an age when most villagers could not read, the clerk was the man who could. He drew up the wills. He kept the parish register. He wrote the letters home. Naming an entire family line after the ability to read tells you exactly how rare that ability once was. In 1790, the most celebrated clerk in America was General George Rogers Clark, the Virginian who seized the Illinois country from the British during the Revolution. And his younger brother, William, was 20 years old that census summer. 14 years later, William Clark would head up the Missouri River beside Meriwether Lewis and write his name across the entire western half of the map. If your name is Clark, your ancestor was the one person in the village the record-keeping ran through. Fitting, then, that the name ended up on the greatest expedition journal in American history. Now, the next name looks as English as a name can look, but in America, it secretly carries a second nationality inside it. Number 7. Miller. Every village in medieval England ground its grain at the local mill, and the man who ran the millstones held one of the most vital jobs in the parish economy. That is the English root. But Miller in America conceals a second founding stream, because it also became the standard translation of the German name Müller. Through the 1700s, tens of thousands of German settlers landed at the port of Philadelphia and spread through the Pennsylvania Dutch country and down the Great Wagon Road into the Valley of Virginia. A great many millers stepped off those ships and became millers within a generation. The 1909 census study put Germans at 5.6% of the white population of 1790, and this one name carried a healthy share of them. So, if your name is Miller and your people were in Pennsylvania or the Shenandoah early, don't assume England. Your trail may run to the Rhineland, hidden under an English spelling for 200 years. We've reached the halfway mark, and the names only get bigger from here. The top handful of founding surnames covered more American households than thousands of rarer names combined. And the single name at number 1 accounted for nearly 6,000 families all by itself. If your roots in this country run deep, the odds your name appears in the next few minutes just went up. This channel traces the history written into Anglo and American family names every week. So, if that's what brought you here, take 1 second and subscribe. Now back to the founding roll of 1790 and a name that helped design the government itself. Number 6. Wilson, son of Will, the everyday short form of William, and a name most at home in northern England and the Scottish lowlands. Its greatest bearer in 1790 was sitting on the brand new Supreme Court of the United States. James Wilson, born in 1742 near Cooper in Fife, Scotland, crossed the Atlantic in 1765, signed the Declaration of Independence, signed the Constitution, and stood as one of only 6 men in history to sign both. A Scottish farm family's son helped design the American government. That is the founding generation compressed into a single name. If your name is Wilson, it almost certainly walked into America through the northern door, lowland Scotland or the border country, and it was present in ink at both of the Republic's birth certificates. The next 2 names come from a country so small it barely shows on the map, and yet its surnames sit near the very top of the American roll. Number 5. Davis, Welsh and gloriously so. Davis means son of David, from the Welsh Dafydd, and David is a patron saint of Wales. The 6th century monk, whose feast on the 1st of March is still the Welsh National Day. Wales adopted fixed surnames late, mostly in the 1500s and 1600s, and when Welsh families finally froze their father-to-son naming into permanent surnames. A few favorites multiplied enormously. Davis crossed the ocean with Welsh settlers into Pennsylvania, Delaware, and the South. By 1790, it ranked among the half-dozen most common names in the new republic. And Davis families were already pushing into the Kentucky and Tennessee country, where so many of their descendants live today. If your name is Davis, you carry the name of the patron saint of Wales filtered through 2 centuries of American frontier. And the next Welsh name grew so dominant back home that villages ran out of ways to tell the families apart. Number 4. Jones, the 3rd great Welsh name near the top of the founding list, meaning son of Iwan, the Welsh form of John. In parts of Wales, the name eventually grew so dominant that neighbors had to be told apart by trade. Jones the mill, Jones the shop. And here's the twist. The most famous Jones of the founding era was not born a Jones at all. John Paul, a young Scottish sea captain from Kirkcudbrightshire, fled a legal dispute in the West Indies around 1773 and added a new surname to vanish into the American colonies. As John Paul Jones, he became the father of the American Navy, and in 1790 he was living out his final years in Paris. Even the founding generation understood that a common name was a fine place to hide. Every researcher chasing a Jones line has learned that same lesson the hard way, and if your name is Jones, your trail is crowded precisely because your name was common enough to found a nation with. 2 names now remain, and between them, they covered more American families than any other names on this list. Number 3. Brown, a plain medieval description. From the Old English brun, given to a neighbor with brown hair or sun-darkened complexion, it grew common in England, in Scotland, and in Ulster 3 separate springs, all feeding the American colonies at once. In 1790, the name was stamped on one of New England's great merchant dynasties, the Brown brothers of Providence, Rhode Island, whose gifts to Rhode Island College led it to take the name Brown University in 1804. And that family carried the founding era's contradictions inside a single household. Some of the Providence Browns invested in the slave trade, while their brother, Moses Brown, became a Quaker abolitionist who fought to end it. One surname, one dinner table, both sides of America's original sin. If your name is Brown, you hold one of the oldest kinds of names there is. A simple description of a face that ended up written on a university, and on both sides of the Republic's hardest argument. Number 2. Johnson, son of John, the single most popular male baptismal name of medieval England, carried by priests, by kings, and by half the boys in every parish register. A name that common in the old country could only grow enormous in the new one, and by 1790, Johnson stood near the very top of the American roll. Its founding era bearers included William Samuel Johnson of Connecticut, a signer of the Constitution, and the first president of Columbia College in New York. And the name spread through every region the Marshals rode, from the Connecticut river towns to the Carolina pine country, in English, Scottish, and Ulster families alike. If your name is Johnson, it was already everywhere before the ink on the Constitution was dry. Yet even Johnson could not touch the name at number 1. Number 1. Smith, the blacksmith. The name comes from the Old English smith, tied to the verb meaning to strike, and it belonged to the man at the forge and anvil, the one who shod the horses, hammered the plough irons, and repaired the muskets. No trade was more universal in the Old World or the New, and no surname came close in the first census. Here is the number this whole video has been building toward. Rossiter's 1909 study found nearly 6,000 Smith heads of families in the surviving 1790. Schedules with over 1,000 in Massachusetts alone, far ahead of every rival. That figure sits in a federal government report, printed by the Census Bureau, and you can read it today. The name had been present since the very beginning of English America, when Captain John Smith helped hold Jamestown together after 1607. If you are a Smith with deep American roots, your name was not just present at the founding, it was the founding's most common signature.